landscape of a modern city, the commemorative statue functions as a stable social fulcrum, a point of bearing for a civic identity. What Rob's upside-down Charles La Trobe does is invert this effect, reconfigures the civic statue as a disorienting and precarious phenomenon, and it calls into question the authority of this particular European visual language. I'm very grateful to Charles Robb because he actually donated this statue to La Trobe University, and at the time that it was installed outside the West Lecture Theatre, he said, universities should be places where ideas are turned on their heads. And I couldn't agree more. Thank you.
I did promise you will be inspired by this particular address, and certainly I'm asking myself the kind of questions of what kind of sculptures do we have around our own campuses, if we have any at all, which one would we turn on our heads? Yeah, and I'm thinking that in just the Westville campus alone, what kinds of sculptural images do we have? What textual forms do we have in the form of just those textual sculptures? But I suppose Noel's challenged us also to the textual sculptures we have in the forms of the way in which our classrooms look, the sound as well, as equally contributing to the nature of what we understand to be the nature of our curriculum and our pedagogy. I liked his comment that malaria is a political disease, and as a way of challenging us about how we understand how knowledges are constructed in our world. I'm not going to summarize all of his interesting ideas about constructive non-alignment, or maybe destructive, or constructive, or reconstructive, or transformative constructive alignments as well. I'm going to do something which is abnormal to a keynote address, because we do have 10 minutes to be able to engage with Noel, who has welcomed the possibility for anyone to interact with him. He will be available throughout the conference, but to interact with him now as you've been influenced by some of his ideas. So I invite now some comments for the next 5 or 8 minutes. Thank you, Nad. Go ahead. You'll have to stand.
Mic check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Can we get a second mic to him? Is there, just while we're waiting, is there another speaker who would like to also respond?
No. Thank you for your interesting talk. And just like you, I've just started a bit of reading into complexity, and my mind is really, really confused and complex. You open up the issue of assessment in curriculum, and for me, it seems to be really a can of worms, because we now have to challenge our ideas about how do we assess, moving away from the linear model of test, examinations, theses, etc. So again, it's an area, I think, of complex worms, I may call that we need to possibly look in terms of our new research directions. But the question that's really troubling me in terms of complexity thinking is the notion of a dynamic balance between competition and cooperation. Now, these are the concepts that are used in complexity thinking, such that the collective is more important than the interacting components. But the question is, how do you see this notion of competition and cooperation performing or operating in higher education curriculum? Can I just add, for example, in terms of motivating researchers to produce research, there's an individual scenario where there's financial rewards for independent work, but also in terms of cutting-edge research, there's a lot of emphasis of teamwork. So that's the kind of ideas I want to explore.
Okay, can I invite another comment or question? Mary, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just love the rebellious approach to curriculum design that you have. I was just intrigued by the concepts that you introduced, the deconstructive non-alignment to critique constructive alignment. I think that was very impressive, but my question is, how do we slowly make a transition from constructive alignment to deconstructive alignment? Because how do we do away with our templates? Are we ready to take the risks now, and how do we move into that?
Okay, thank you. Noel, would you like to respond?
I'm sorry I didn't quite get the full gist of all of those because the acoustics in here are pretty terrible. But
Can I help to just align it? But I can clarify if you would like to. But go ahead.
one of the questions I refuse to answer is, how do I do something? I can't tell you that. In any given situation, we've got to take responsibility for our own decisions. When we're faced with situations where there is no obvious clear path forward, we have to make decisions. And nobody can make them for you. Certainly not me.
Okay, that's a challenge back to us, to take the responsibility for what kinds of alignments we're wishing to produce or engage or construct.